sa bukod, hindi ba nakasalanan ng video?
Media educators and journalists called to defend press freedom.
This corruption in media. No
You're watching News Cafe on the Southern News Channel. I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno, sitting in for Jing Magsaysay. We're here at the Lexus Manila showroom, and with me are my guests for this evening, C Magazine Editor-in-Chief, and also the anchor of his own podcast, Counterflow, Mr. James Deacon, and the Editor-in-Chief of Top Gear Philippines, Mr. Vernon Sarne. Good evening, guys.
Good evening.
All right. So, what's the state of motoring media nowadays? I mean, I do see a lot of magazines now and centering on motoring, and they seem to be getting thicker. What is the state currently now?
Well, motoring media now, especially in the Philippines, is more dynamic.
Yeah.
It's also much bigger than when I started in 1995.
Right.
Back then, there was just a handful of motoring journalists working for the major broadsheets.
You started off as writing for.
I used to be an
editor.
editorial assistant for Automotion magazine. It
Nice.
used to be the de facto leading car magazine back then because it was the only car magazine back then.
Okay.
Back then, of course, as you know, there was no internet.
Right.
Well, there was internet, but
Yeah. Very minimal.
very minimal.
Very minimal access to it.
And at that time, a test drive mostly meant driving the car around the car company's compound.
All right.
But now you can actually take it home with you for a week.
That's great.
Take it wherever you want.
Yeah.
And now also we have so many social media
Right.
practitioners,
Who do their own reviews
bloggers.
now.
So now we're probably around 50.
Yeah. That's great. James, your own experience?
Exactly the same thing. I started about 6 years after Vernon. So in 2001, internet was there, but it wasn't popular as it is today. So the access that people have to information has changed the landscape of journalism for us. As Vernon mentioned, we had new people come up, bloggers, social media personalities, etc. But now you're even competing with your own readers, because these readers are so well read and they have access to every kind of information. When they're shopping for a car, they're checking US, UK, all these other websites, and you're engaging your audience now, and this is, I think, where it's changed a lot.
Right. Now, with the economy growing, I'm assuming, and also basing it from the thickness of your magazines every month. I mean, your magazine seems to be getting thicker. The following has to be growing tremendously, right?
Yeah. Well, in my case, our magazine is very well complemented by our website and our Facebook page as well, and Twitter account.
So from there, you can tell how many followers you're getting.
Yes, actually.
Your followers are growing.
Yeah.
Yes, exponentially.
Whereas before, your audience actually had to wait for your magazine to come out every month.
Right.
But now they can actually interact with you. And many of our readers, I'm sure this is the same with James, many of our readers are actually friends with us online.
Right.
So there's the personal touch now.
Right.
We used to be
You used to just issue it out and then
and we
go
were
ahead
just
and read it.
read by everyone. But
Yeah.
now we sometimes actually even get into animated arguments with the readers.
Do you have the same experience, James, with your readers?
Similar. Our online presence is not as we haven't invested as much in that.
So you don't have a web version?
We do have, but I've noticed that with Top Gear's community, they have a very strong, active community, whatever. But which, of course, we have to develop as well. I agree with what Vernon's saying. Is that you've opened the doors. That divide is not there like it used to be back in the 90s. And before, everything you printed was gospel. I mean, for them to cross-check everything, it took them forever.
Yeah.
And even if they did, they didn't have a voice to say that. So now it's changed in a way where you have to now work with your readers, engage them, and find new platforms on how you educate them and become relevant to them.
Right.
Because nowadays you can become irrelevant just like that.
Right. Now, in your case, you're Top Gear, but it's not. So when you say Top Gear, it's not necessarily limited to just cars. It can be anything, right? Or it's just,
no, we're
or is it
mostly
focused on
cars. We're mostly cars, but
alright.
the treatment of the stories is more lifestyle features about the car culture as a whole,
Right.
not just technical cars.
All right. Now, the magic word, sponsors, advertisers. I'm assuming, again, just seeing your magazines getting thicker every month, they're getting heavier. I'm assuming that the sponsors are gravitating towards these type of magazines, modern magazines, James?
Absolutely. I think where people play, sponsors will pay. It's just the way it's always been. And there's two arguments there. Very interesting point you bring up, because a lot of people say, well, isn't magazines or aren't magazines on their way out?
Aren't they dying?
Yes. I mean, with print, with everything going online, aren't you guys on a very short lifespan? And there's two ways to look at that. One is, yes, people are consuming media now on tablets, etc. But if you look at the internet, it's mostly like going to a big sprawling buffet, which is great. You have access to everything, but some people just want to sit down and be served sometimes. So there'll always be a market for a magazine that just caters to you. It's like a plated dinner.
Right.
Sit down, get 7 courses, and you don't even know what you're in for.
Yeah.
And that will never die.
Right.
And of course, at the end of the day, content is king. So you really have to make sure that you've got good content, whether it's in a printed form or online form. There will always be a place, and sponsors will come for that, because internet, they say, is, well, all the activities there, but you'll notice that it's usually print media that drives internet traffic all the time.
Right.
Whether you're picking up something from the newspaper or the magazine, it goes and creates conversations online.
But do you see it eventually, like for example, Newsweek, which has existed for all eternity, has stopped its printing, and it's now purely an app, and that you can download on your tablet. Do you foresee your magazines to eventually go that route?
I think print still has a longer
Shelf life, I guess.
shelf life in the Philippines, especially. In the US, I think print is in trouble, because virtually every household has internet.
Right.
Unlike here in the Philippines, and I think Filipinos still would like to
You still
bring
like
the physical.
the feel of that
Yeah.
glossy magazine.
You have to bring something to the bathroom with you. And
Well, the iPad can go in there now, but you're right. It's also with Newsweek. It's a different model. News happens like that, and it's technology magazines that have a harder time, because with us we can still revolve a lifestyle around, so we can still have more timeless pieces. We just need to be more careful about what we're putting into the magazine, that it doesn't expire by the time it's printed. It's yesterday's news. Nobody wants to read that.
Yeah, because what challenges do you have, or what do you do to ensure that if you pick up that magazine, it feels like, oh, this is a current magazine, considering that you have to kind of play around with the models of the cars and all that?
well, automotive publications have this tendency to just deliver technical stuff. If you fall into that trap, then you will start.
You will age your
You will start
magazine.
sounding boring
Yeah.
after a while, because after a while, you will sound just like your competitors.
Yeah.
But if you offer something that's fresh, that's not like for us, for instance, what I'm talking about is presenting the car in an orthodox way, not the usual test drive thing.
Not technical, but more.
Not technical,
you said
but
lifestyle,
more lifestyle,
right.
more feature.
Personality of the car.
We do a lot of humorous stories.
Yeah.
That's why many of my editors and writers are popular with the readers, because we make fun of ourselves, actually.
Right.
Of course, without losing your
So it's
authority.
kind of self-effacing.
Your credibility. But
Right.
you have to present your stories in a way that your competitors do not offer.
Now, James, the thing here is that you act not just kind of a feature for a car. You kind of, and this goes for Vernon as well. You're also kind of a critic in a way. You have to be, because you have to be balanced, right? You can't be praising cars all the time. No? Now, and here's my question there, because obviously the same things that you're critiquing are probably the models of the car companies that you're tapping as a sponsor. How do you draw the line there? How do you manage that?
Well, that's the art, really, because and that line's getting more and more blurred as our readers get more educated, as I was saying. You have to continue to push forward. I think there's not a decent manufacturer out there that can't take criticism if it's constructive and if it's qualified. Like, you cannot just say this car is crap.
Yeah, you can't say it's a lemon or it sucks.
Well, qualify that statement first. I mean, where exactly are you getting that that from? What have you tested before that to be able to say that? And exactly why? I mean, that is where you start saying, look, you can say this car is fantastic like this, like this, like this. However, I think in this segment, it really should have a larger multimedia display because its competitor has a 12.7 inch and this one is 10.2. And I think you're offering it in a way that they say, well, he's right, or that's a good point. This car has 17-inch rims. It rides a little rough, but I think if they put 18-inch and then this kind of rubber, you're offering a little solutions. You're actually
So you're criticizing, but also offering
yes,
solutions.
because you know sometimes what might be a firm ride and what you might call matagtag might just handle and corner beautifully. But your priority might be, I don't like that. I want to be comfortable in the back seat. Then there's a car for you.
Right.
So there's no blanket way of criticizing a car. You have to take it for what they're targeting. Car companies always have a target market, a person in mind. And you cannot say that, it's no point saying that Mitsubishi Mirage is, oh, it wasn't very fast and all that. It's not meant to be. It's meant to be a fuel miser.
Efficient, that's
And now if that car did not give you good fuel consumption, you have every right to say, this is a fault. Because that's exactly what it does.
Right.
You wouldn't complain that you can't transport a sofa in your Porsche.
Because that's
So,
not,
so
that's
don't
not what it's
complain
for.
about the gas consumption of an Expedition. It
Now,
is what it is.
Leading to that question earlier, have you had situations wherein a car company would call you and say, hey, how come you gave us a bad review? Hey, what if we advertise with you and soften the criticism a bit?
But when I was starting in the 90s, I actually had an episode with a major Japanese car maker who actually called me out for a negative test review, and they were advertising in our publication.
They were threatening to pull out.
I guess the trick is to show everyone that you're fair. If you criticize a car by a certain brand, be sure to also criticize the others.
Right.
The problem is if you mostly write positive reviews,
you lose your...
when you're dealing with a certain car brand, and then with the others you sound very negative, eventually the others will take, the industry will take notice. These guys pro Toyota,
So, and also,
pro Honda.
it also impacts on your credibility if you keep on praising, right? If you're just
absolutely.
praising all the time. One of the reasons why your followers are getting bigger is that they feel that you don't compromise. You will be fair in your judgment.
But can I add this? There's this worrying trend now in our business where some publications actually sell the editorial space. You put an ad in our section, and then we will come up with an article.
Yeah, that's becoming.
That's
sort of
happening
like
now.
Practice, yeah. What do you feel about that?
Of course, I feel so bad because the clueless readers
Will not
have
know,
no idea that they're being fed
an advertorial.
an advertorial actually.
So, how
So
do you
it's a
manage
1+1.
How do you manage that, James?
Well, I agree with Vernon, but I think that if that's the avenue you take, you're going to lose your readers very, very fast because as the clueless ones...
you sacrifice your editorial.
Absolutely, but you'll actually, car makers will start to see the market today are so educated that they can spot and smell those reviews a mile away, and like Vernon said, only the clueless ones will be left. And the car companies don't want to talk to the clueless ones. They want to talk to the educated ones, the influential people, the ones who can influence your decisions and stuff. It's really sad when it ends up like that because it takes all the excitement out of it, takes all the credibility out of it, and it just starts looking like a brochure. There's no value to it.
But again, when you started I guess it must be exciting for you guys because when you started, let's say 1995, in your case 2001, the car industry landscape wasn't that much. You really just had Toyota, Mitsubishi, and then possibly
And
a
that
couple
had its
more.
own challenges because you're a small family. It's harder to, it's easy to hit, but it doesn't become as personal when there's so many of you now.
Right.
And that's what's happening now. We get new guys coming in and they don't know the history or whatever, and then they start throwing criticisms around. Could I just add another point that what Vern said? There's two sides to that. There's the one where you're just too much of a praise release, or you're trying to please the manufacturers, etc. There's also the other extreme opposite, where you just criticize for the sake of criticizing to sound like you're credible, and not knowing that there's an art in that too. somebody like Jeremy Clarkson didn't get where he was today by just being blanket criticism. I mean, they're pointed. He has a background. He has a name, and everyone wants to be him.
Yeah.
And I've seen so many people fall flat on their face because if you don't know what you're talking about and you don't have not qualified your statement, you're just going to get buried by both the car manufacturers and your own readers.
Yeah.
So it's about
So it's a kind of
it's always a balancing act. Now,
it's an art.
your original question about advertisers complaining in the magazine, we like to think of our advertisers as very, very mature. And like I said, so long as you stick to being fair, constructive, and you never go below the belt, they're there to say, okay, well, fine. You know what? We've learned from that. Because if I say every car's got neck snapping power, spine-tingling performance, the manufacturers will be like, well, what's the difference with our car? I mean, it's all...
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, and to their credit, I just have to add this. To their credit, they do not actually talk to me and say and ask me like, can you write a very glowing review of because we're advertising.
They'll
I think they respect us enough
allow
not
your
to
editorial
do
freedom.
it.
Right.
Especially I think the longtime editors like James and myself, they wouldn't dare.
Yeah, they wouldn't
But
dare.
not just because they wouldn't dare, but because also we've maintained a personal friendship with them.
Yeah, and they earn their respect, I'm sure.
And that's the respect is mutual.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Right.
So they trust us.
trust
They trust us that we're going to be balanced and fair. And yes, it's very rare. I can count in one hand the amount of times that somebody's actually called up and said, you know, that's not fair, whatever.
All right, great. Well, we need to take a short break. News Cafe will be right back. Please don't go away. You're back with us here on News Cafe, and with us tonight, of course, the editor-in-chief of C Magazine, Mr. James Deacon, and the editor-in-chief of Top Gear Philippines, Mr. Vernon Sarne. Guys, we were talking about motoring media earlier, but now let me shift gears. And let's talk about motorsports, which I personally love. I was in Singapore. I was based in Singapore during the first F1 night race. Back in, I think that was 2008. I think, and that was great. Just the adrenaline rush. But unfortunately, and maybe you can correct my perception here, motorsports is not that huge here in the Philippines yet, right? Or maybe I'm wrong. Is it, Vernon? What do you think?
Well, yes, the motorsport scene has been struggling in the Philippines for many years now. And there are many factors that we can attribute that to. I think one of the main factors is that there's a pointed lack of sponsors.
All right.
Racing, as you know, is very expensive. You don't just pick up a go-kart or a race car and then hit the track on your own. You need sponsors. The problem is, for you to attract the sponsors, you have to have the audience.
Right.
But the thing is, I don't think Filipinos are into motorsports. We're a nation of
majority of.
We're a nation of basketball fans, boxing fans, but I don't think. Of course, in our circle, we'd like to believe that there are many racing fans in the Philippines, but that's only our circle.
James, your thoughts?
Well, Vern's absolutely right. It's the chicken and the egg thing, because without the sponsors, they can't promote the sport to make it popular. It's hard for the average person who doesn't own a car to appreciate and empathize and become a fan of motorsports. The entry fee is just too high.
Yeah.
And however, having said that, I think motorsports is coming up to a tipping point very, very soon. Because what we need is one local hero, at least, a global icon that we can say, like a Manny Pacquiao.
Yeah.
If we can have somebody like that, then we weren't soccer fans either until the
Yeah.
Azkals came in. You could argue that about any sport. And there are many other countries that have this model, like Russia weren't into F1. All of a sudden, when they got Petrov, they became. Venezuela, they didn't know anything about F1 either. Then the country got behind one driver, Maldonado, and they actually supported him, and now they're F1 crazy because it's not necessarily a sport, it's a national pride that they're looking at.
Right.
So I think we're at the tipping point right now where we have people like Marlon Stockinger who have gone so far, and are at the doorstep or the foyer of Formula One.
Yeah.
Now, the foyer is a very large place, by the way. We need to push him over the edge and get him there. And I think if we could get somebody like that in F1, you would see a huge surge in motorsports.
You think there's ever a chance that there's going to be an F1 here? I know that before that we had F3 races or
AF3,
AF3, right? You think there's ever a shot? Let's say a place like Clark or Subic where we have a lot of space.
It's a long shot, but
Yeah.
you know, it can be done. If you have guys like Manny Pangilinan and
Yeah.
Ramon Ang, you know, it can be done. Technically speaking,
Yeah, but
it can be
750
done.
Yes, it is.
Unfortunately, speaking of sponsors, the Philippine racing community has suffered a major black
Blow,
eye
yeah.
blow recently. 5 of our local drivers
In NASCAR.
were flown to the U.S. in Charlotte, supposedly to drive
Nations Cup.
a series,
Alright.
legitimate
Against 12 nations.
race series. But then when they got there, turns out it was just what was that?
A
It was-
racing experience.
a
No,
racing
no
experience.
difference than you would.
It was a racing school. They actually played a video game
Yeah.
and toured the facility.
So it wasn't that great.
No,
It wasn't a race.
Wasn't
Wasn't
even.
a
It was
race?
not even.
okay.
What Vernon's saying is that basically it was a scam.
Okay.
And what I think the point that Vernon's driving at, which is a very valid one, is that you know you got the momentum of Marlon, the hunger was there, the excitement was
Yeah.
there, and somebody came along and went with that and sold a dream, and that dream turned into a nightmare because there was no such race. It was
This is
just,
bad because they asked for
Yeah.
sponsors.
Oh, wow.
And now it turns out, how do you now attract sponsors?
Yeah.
They were
That's-
burned
that's
to the
quite a
tune of
challenge.
15 million pesos. That's what was reported. And these people put down in good faith. And then now the next generation that come up and say, can you help me? I think my son's going to be the next big thing, the next, whatever. We've heard it all before.
Yeah.
And that's
So
the
that's-
blow
that's
that,
the problem,
I
yeah.
think Vernon's talking about, that we really...
You have to overcome that, yeah.
We had in the same week, one arm raised in the air and then the other black eye. In the same week, it happened within days of each other.
Well, too bad. But I'm going to shift gears now, guys, and I'm going to put you in the hot seat in a way, and I'm going to ask you guys about brands. You know, the top, maybe not top selling brands, but just cars that you really like in their specific categories. Let's say, you know, of course, there are several categories.
Yeah.
Let's say in the luxury side, which cars do you like?
Yeah, well, luxury,
Yeah.
the premium brands, I like, of course, Lexus.
Yeah.
Not
course.
because not
Yeah,
just because
because
we're
we're
here,
here,
but really Lexus
No,
is
it really does have a nice, right?
consistently
Yeah.
Lexus consistently tops owner surveys surveys when it comes to quality
Right.
and reliability. And I also like BMW actually for the sportiness. Of course, for luxury you can go wrong with the Mercedes-Benz, but I think the top 2 premium brands I would say for me would be Lexus and BMW.
How about you, James?
Yeah, I'm about the same there. What I like about Lexus is understated luxury. You're not trying to scream it out. Great value for money when you look at the features that you get. Engineering is outstanding and very underrated.
Right.
They're also selling you the whole experience. The Lexus experience is just look at the showroom. I mean, it's really really nice. You feel like you're part of a club. They got fantastic models as well. I'm also with Vernon with the BMW because we just came from the BMW experience, M driving experience in Clark, and it's hard to get the sound of those M engines from ringing in my ears. It was just fantastic to be able to take those cars out on what they were born to do, which is on a racetrack. Yeah, Mercedes, an icon, and the thing that separates them now is not necessarily in their technological advancements, but how they're positioning themselves, because it's now about personality. What do you relate to?
Yeah.
If you're a sporty type of person, you will lean towards BMW. If you're understated luxury and just good value, you'll stay with Lexus because nobody does it better. And then, well, Mercedes-Benz, no, you don't need to tell a single person what that brand does.
Yeah,
You know, they're very
exactly.
good.
All right, you go out. I'm going to ask you guys to go out on a limb here. Choose one SUV, normal price, not luxury, and one sedan
Wow.
that you would, I guess, top of mind.
This is not necessarily
your favorite.
an objective answer.
Yeah,
This is my
kind of- yeah,
personal,
your
my
personal-
personal. I'm actually, because you mentioned SUV, I've actually been eyeing. I'm a different kind of a car customer, car
Yeah.
buyer, but I have been eyeing the little Suzuki Jimny. I'd
Jimny,
like to
alright.
get that.
That's an answer I never would have guessed, but
Yeah, it's
yeah.
cheap and it's
was
very
actually checking
capable.
that out as well, yeah.
It's very capable. For
Yeah.
700,000 pesos, you have a small SUV
Fair,
that can
yeah.
actually climb the mountains.
That's fair.
It's
yeah.
they call it the
It's like a mountain goat.
mountain
Mountain
goat.
goat. Okay. For a sedan?
Yeah, but for a sedan, I'm not a sedan. I'm more of a hatchback person.
Yeah, okay.
But well,
Anything.
but
Again, subjective. These are just your subjective.
among the sedans, I'd probably still go for probably the Civic.
Civic, yeah.
I'm waiting for the all new Altis.
The Altis.
I don't know if I can say it, but the Toyota is launching the all new Altis
Oh, great.
later this year.
Okay, so that's something to look
I have
forward
to see that one.
James?
You ask really hard questions. That's the hardest question you've asked so far, and it's not because of political reasons. It's just when you ask somebody,
What's your favorite?
Who's the hottest girl? You know, there's so
Yeah.
much to talk
I guess the answer
about.
is the first thing that comes to
Okay,
your
the
mind.
first thing that comes to mind, because I would, in my position right now, my station of life, I would go for a Trailblazer. I like it's a 7-seater diesel
Yeah.
SUV in a very modest price range. It's under 2 million. It's got, for me, the best NVH. Because it's new. It's the first all new next generation 7-seater pickup-based SUV.
Okay.
So they've done it right. Now the competitors are bound to catch up, but right now there's a 3-month waiting list for one. You don't even get to choose a color because it really is good value for money. That is one, I think, for a sedan. I'm also not a sedan person, but if you're really, really going to press me for it, I would probably go with the Focus only because it's so well featured. I mean, it's a car that can park itself. It's got city start, active stop. It's got so much for 1.1 million.
And it has
pesos.
a kind of a unique shape also.
It's kind of a unique shape. I wouldn't do it just for the shape, but I've never seen anything in that price range that's been able to integrate so much in terms of features. Plus, the connectivity now of Ford is really world class. I mean, they've done that really an outstanding job.
Well, fantastic answers. Unfortunately, guys, that's all the time that we have. I wish I could have another hour with you because I have a ton more, a ton of questions actually. But yeah, unfortunately, we have to end right there. And we'd like to thank our guests for today, Mr. Vernon Sarne, of course, the editor-in-chief of Top Gear Philippines, and of course, the editor-in-chief of C Magazine, Mr. James Deegan. Thank you guys for joining us. And that's about it for News Cafe. Please join us again next Thursday for another round of News Cafe. This is Attorney Rod Nepomuceno. Good night and God bless.
Saka sa 14 na ba nakasalanan natin dito?
Media educators and journalists called to defend press freedom.
This corruption in media will reduce
You're engaging your audience now, and this is, I think, where it's changed a lot.
Right. Now, with the economy growing, I'm assuming, and also basing it from the thickness of your magazines every month. I mean, your magazine seems to be getting thicker. The following has to be growing tremendously, right?
Yeah. Well, in my case, our magazine is very well complemented by our website and our Facebook page as well, and Twitter account.
So from there, you can tell how many followers you're getting.
Yes, actually.
Your followers are growing.
Yeah.
Yes, exponentially.
Whereas before, your audience actually had to wait for your magazine to come out every month.
Right.
But now they can actually interact with you one. And now also we have so many social media practitioners,
Who do their own reviews,
bloggers.
no?
So now we're probably around 50.
That's great. James, your own experience?
Exactly the same thing. I started about 6 years after Vernon. So in 2001, internet was there, but it wasn't popular as it is today. So the access that people have to information has changed the landscape of journalism for us. As Vernon mentioned, we had new people come up, bloggers, social media personalities, etc. But now you're even competing with your own readers, because these readers are so well read and they have access to every kind of information. When they're shopping for a car, they're checking US, UK, all these other websites, and you read.
Saka sa 14 na ba nakasalanan natin dito?
Media educators and journalists called to defend press freedom.
This corruption in media will Saka sa 14 na ba nakasalanan natin dito?
You're watching News Cafe on the Southern News Channel. I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno, sitting in for Jing Magsaysay. We're here at the Lexus Manila showroom, and with me are my guests for this evening, C Magazine Editor-in-Chief, and also the anchor of his own podcast, Counterflow, Mr. James Deacon, and the Editor-in-Chief of Top Gear Philippines, Mr. Vernon Sarne. Good evening, guys.
Good evening.
All right. So, what's the state of motoring media nowadays? I mean, I do see a lot of magazines now and centering on motoring, and they seem to be getting thicker. What is the state currently now?
Well, motoring media now, especially in the Philippines, is more dynamic.
Yeah.
It's also much bigger than when I started in 1995.
Right.
Back then, there was just a handful of motoring journalists working for the major broadsheets.
You started off as writing for.
I used to be an
editor.
editorial assistant for Automotion magazine. It used to be the de facto leading car magazine back then because it was the only car magazine back then.
Okay.
Back then, of course, as you know, there was no internet.
Right.
Well, there was internet, but
Yeah. Very minimal.
very minimal.
Very minimal access to it.
And at that time, a test drive mostly meant driving the car around the car company's compound.
All right.
But now you can actually take it home with you for a week.
That's great.
Take it wherever you